We are now going to look at the third responsibility that councils have when it comes to the budget. This responsibility deals with requesting additional funds from the local Board of Education, if and when those funds are available. So as I said in the beginning of the training, these are going to be called Section 7 funds, and these will not always be available. Sometimes they will be depending on the district, but sometimes they may not be available, and then the next year they are, and then the year after that they're not. So it's never a guarantee that these will be available, but in the instance that they are, there are some protocols that will have to be followed in order to be able to use these funds. So responsibility number 3, if we're looking at our chart, to request most often in writing from the local school board the additional funds. And like I said, these funds are commonly referred to as Section 7 funds. So Kentucky's primary funding regulation is 702 KAR 3246, and this regulation outlines the distributions of funds to schools. The regulation is divided into sections, which determines the uses of for the funds. In Section 3 of that regulation, the school district sets aside funds needed for district expenses, and then the district allocates to the school council through Sections 4 and 5, which are certified and classified staff that are required at the school. And then instructional monies based on Support Education Excellence in Kentucky, which are SEEK funds, are included in Section 6 distributions to councils. And so Section 6, or the SEEK funds, are what is given to the councils every year for the councils to use on instructional supplies. And so that is the money that goes directly to the council for the council to decide what they want to use, what they want to do with those funds. So after all those expenditures are set aside from Sections 3, 4, 5, and 6, any remaining funds that are left over from that district allocation are referred to as Section 7. So those remaining funds are subject to the distribution guidelines that are outlined in the regulation. The local Board of Education can vote to provide additional funding to schools, and they have 4 different methods that they can choose on how to distribute these funds. So the first method that they have is the average daily attendance, or ADA. So here, the local Board of Education would divide the money among all the schools in the district based on the student average daily attendance. And so they would take the Section 7 funds as a whole and divide it amongst the schools according to their ADA. The second method is the school council identification. And this is where each school council lists needs from its school improvement plan or their needs assessment. They would determine what the biggest needs are in the school. And then the local Board of Education would decide if they want to, grant none of those needs, some of those needs, or all of those needs to that particular school. So this is where the council comes in. So if there are those funds and the district wants to, use this method, the council would meet together and decide what the biggest needs are in that school, and ways that that money could be spent in order to help meet those needs. And then the district would decide if they want to use those funds for some of those needs, all of them, or none of them. So that is another method. The third one is desegregated data, and this is where the local Board of Education targets money to an area of student need shown by the school's data, and the council decides how to use that money. So this is kind of like the opposite of the second one. So the board would decide what needs the school has. So maybe they see that the school has the need in math, and then once they get that money from the district, then the council would say, okay, we have this money, we have to use it on math, so let's use it for this, and they would decide how to use that. And then the last method is just a combination of the 3 of these, or a combination of the 3 of these. So they can combine these methods to distribute Section 7 resources depending on what they think is best for each school. So if a school wants Section 7B funds, the school must make a school council request. So B here is the school council identification, that second bullet. If a school wants the funds for, have to submit a request, and they in that request, it's their opportunity to ask the Board of Education to consider their unique needs. They have a plan in place of how they're going to use those funds, and why the board should grant them those funds for that purpose. It is the best practice for a school to have readily available a wish list of sorts based on the school's needs assessment already, even before even knowing if there's Section 7 funds, just to have that ready in case. And they're going to obviously base that on the school's needs assessment and their school improvement plan. What are their needs? What is the data showing of why that it's a need, and that sort of thing. So we do encourage each school council to check its local district policy for the process, the timeline that the council will need to follow when requesting Section 7 monies. So you'll want to just kind of get a head start and look at what the policy says on that process. So with that information, we are going to next do a quiz. And in this quiz, you are going to be given a scenario in which Section 7 funds were distributed to a particular school. And then after you read that scenario, you are going to select which distribution method of these 4 that the local Board of Education utilized in this instance. So you'll read the scenario, you'll decide was used by the board, and then there is a correct answer, so you'll be able to see if you got that answer correct. So you can kind of go back to this video if you need to have a more just a reminder of what each method is, but hopefully you'll be able to kind of see what that looks like once you start reading the scenarios. So you can go over to the next activity, complete that, and then we will go over some of the answers.